All right, since I've asked you to, though not required, but suggested if you wanted to make your shape in Illustrator, your creature or whatever you're making in Illustrator this week, and bring it into Photoshop, I figured I would go ahead and show you just a very quick demo on the very basics of Illustrator. Okay, if you really want to get into it, number one, I'm always happy to provide information and resources if you have specific questions. And the Adobe website has about, I don't know, 150,000 tutorials on all kinds of specific things. So, but let me at least show you how you can start to work with Illustrator. There are some similarities to Photoshop. I don't think Illustrator is quite as user-friendly as Photoshop. It has gotten better, is all I have to say. So I built this thing out of shapes, essentially. Okay, Illustrator works with vector. Okay, that is where its strength is. You can place raster objects into Illustrator. That means pixels versus using a mathematical formula to figure things out. Okay, the Illustrator was specifically designed to make illustrations, and also to make illustrations that are infinitely scalable, so you don't lose quality. Right? When you go to print, by the way, so just as a quick, first of all, let me go ahead and open up a new document first. So I'm going to go to File, New, and I'll tell you about that. Okay. You'll notice it's very similar to Photoshop, and that's going to ask you if you want to do mobile, web, print. Okay. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and make a letter. You can change the orientation if you want here and here. Okay. The color mode is set to CMYK. That's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That is traditional offset printing. Okay, that's underneath your advanced options. You don't really need to play with that. You can put it in RGB if you want. Okay, I'm going to hit create, okay, and it's going to give me a new artboard. Okay, so Illustrator was originally made to make illustrations by using shapes and vector images, make them scalable. When you go to print, that is when all printers have essentially now, it used to not be this way, they have something that translates from the vector image to a raster image. Okay, EPS used to be a very popular file format from Illustrator, and that stands for Encapsulated Postscript. And what that meant was that when you went to go print, Illustrator would put the information in for the printer to be able to interpret what it was seeing. Okay. People still use EPS. It's not really that common. I will tell you, again, depending on what you're doing, if you're going to put stuff on the web, JPEG is still your best. Okay, GIFs aren't necessarily bad either, or PNGs. All right, so let me just cover some of the basic shapes and a little bit of the layout. Okay, once again, window, arrange. Okay, you can move things around. You can tile them. You can float in the window. Pardon me. Your workspace. Okay, also gives you Essentials. You can reset it to the Essentials Classic. I will tell you that the Essentials Classic is particularly useful to me because that's how I learned Illustrator. I don't use it a ton nowadays. I do use it. When I worked for a photography place and the screen printing place, I used it a ton. I got very, very familiar with it. Okay, and again, in here you can find all of your windows. So Illustrator has this set up where you have your selection tool and your direct selection tool as A and V. Okay. So all I'm going to show you in this is how to start using shapes. So from here, now I will tell you likely, I have mine set on here to the advanced. When you open it up, you'll probably have the basic. Okay, and the basic you'll notice has less shapes. Okay, and there's a reason for that. I personally, it annoys me, but I understand. Okay, so your rectangle tool and your ellipse tool both have keyboard shortcuts along with your line segment tool. Your rectangle tool, you can take it, click and drag, and pull out a shape. Okay, it is usually set here. Now here's the difference. In Photoshop, this is your background and your foreground and your background. Illustrator, this is your fill and your stroke. Okay, so again, these are all vector images, right? They automatically come with bounding boxes. Okay, so if I click here, it's going to give me a bounding box. Okay, if you don't see that, you can find it underneath View. Okay, and you'll notice it says hide bounding box here. So if I do that, you won't see the bounding box. You usually don't want to do that, so go ahead and have show bounding box. Okay, if I use my selection tool, right, it's much like your transform tool in Photoshop. I can rotate, I can spin it around, okay, I can do all those things. Your fill and your stroke, okay, if you double click on the fill, you can change the color, okay, and you can do the same thing on the stroke. Right, you can change the color of the stroke. Now, in order to change the width of the stroke, you'll notice, and let me zoom in, and it uses the same zoom in, zoom out as Photoshop does. Right, it's a fairly thin line, and what happens is you see the path, and it's going to go ahead and put a stroke on either side of it. So you will need to go into stroke, okay, and here is where you can change what's called the weight. Okay, so I have to select my object first. Okay, and I can make this much thicker. Okay, so and that will remain no matter how I resize it. Okay, now you may notice as I'm moving things around, you see these pink lines. Okay, that is part of your smart guides. Again, you can turn those off underneath your view. Your smart guides will. Let me pull out another. I'll pull out another rectangle. Okay, when I go to move this, you'll notice in particular. Okay, you see how now this means that they're lined up, their centers are lined up. Okay, or if I move it underneath here, okay, now their edges are lined up. Okay, same with here. Okay, it would also tell you like how far apart. So Illustrator is just trying to help you that way, and it'll snap to it. Okay. Now, in order to start making shapes, okay, you can come in here as well. Oh, let me show you. This is with the rectangle tool because this is fairly new. Okay, when you pull out a rectangle, okay, you can also click, by the way, and set a size. That's perfectly fine. Okay, you see these little sort of like dots in the corner. This is for the rounded rectangle. So let me go ahead. By the way, you can turn off of the stroke. You see where it has this little none right here? Just click on that, and now there's no stroke to it. Okay, these little widgets here, if I click and pull in, will round, okay, my square. So if you want to make rounded squares, that's the easiest way to do that. If you want to copy and paste, it's very similar to Photoshop, where you can Command C, Command V, okay, or with your direct selection tool, right? You can click and hold Alt and pull out another copy. Okay. Now you'll notice here, if I switch to my direct selection tool and I click on my object, I have my anchor points. Okay, and if I grab just one of them, okay, I can start changing my shape around. Okay. Now these are set up automatically. If you want to convert them, okay, underneath your pen tool, you have your anchor point tool, which is Shift-C is the keyboard shortcut. Okay, so if I click on it once, it makes it a straight point. If I click and drag, it's going to make a point where I have two control handles that work together. Okay, if I grab one of the handles, essentially I can break it, okay, to make shapes. All right. So now we'll have, here's the ellipse tool. Okay, it does the same thing. You can click and drag to pull out. You see how you're getting the crosshairs there when you pull it out? When you have that, that means you have a perfect circle. Okay. Now you can also make a perfect circle by holding Shift, and you notice the crosshairs stay the whole time. Okay. And again, you can do the same thing. You can come in and click on this. Okay. And if you click on it, everything will be selected, so you'll have to click on the anchor point you want to play with. Okay. And you can pull that around very quickly. So if I use, for example, my Convert Anchor Point tool, okay, I can very quickly make a heart shape, right? And I'd want to fiddle around with this till it looked good. Okay, but it's super easy to do, or a sideways butt, I guess, because that's kind of actually what it looks like someone who's been out in the sun way too long. All right. You can also, in Illustrator, use your pen tool, okay, to make freeform shapes. And again, you can change the color. When you change the color over here, okay, you can select it from here as well. And there's also swatches. Okay, and if you don't see them, go to Window and Swatches right down here. Okay, and with that, you can change the color of your object very quickly. Also, you see the burger menu here, the three lines. Okay, you can also go in here and open up a swatch library, and there are quite a few of them. So if you are making a design, you want it to look bright, or if you want it to look warm, okay, if I click on warm, it's going to give me a palette here. I can click and pull down, okay, of all warm colors. So this is a really easy way to do color design. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you, because we're getting in the weeds a little bit here, okay, is the Align palette and the Pathfinder tool, because these will help you make complex shapes. So just as an example, to make the eyelids with the Frankenstein bear, okay, I went ahead and just make a brown. Okay, I made a shape like this, okay, and I want to make two eyelids. So the easiest way for me to do that, there is a cut tool, but just for easiness sake, I'm going to grab a rectangle, pull it out, line it up about halfway, hold down Shift to select both objects. Right, here's my Pathfinder tool. So for example, I can combine these into one shape. Okay. I can also essentially trim what's in front, where they intersect, okay, and exclude, which will exclude where they are overlapping. This is an easy way, by the way, to make some really nice looking designs. Here's my go-to tool. My go-to one is Divide, because it always does what I want it to, which is now, you notice if I click on the different areas, okay, it made them one shape, okay, but divided these. So this was how I made my eyelids. And then to make the eyeball, again, I got the ellipse tool, pulled out a perfect circle. Yeah, I'll just make it black and white here. Okay. Hold it in front to resize it. Okay. And then what I needed to do is send this back. Okay. There are layers in Illustrator, and let me show you what they do though. So Illustrator will by default put everything onto the same layer. When you click on the arrow, what's going to happen? It's going to show you, okay, where these things are. So I'm going to drag that behind, okay, and now it's behind. The other thing I can do is use my Command or keyboard Control and use the brackets to send it back and forth. Okay, you'll notice too when I divided it, Illustrator automatically made this a group, which is fine. If you wanted to ungroup this, though, what you want to do is hit Control-Shift-G, okay, and that will ungroup it so I can move these separately. So in the case of making the hamster, or not the hamster, sorry, the teddy bear looking Frankenstein-y thingy, okay, what I did was I made a new layer for each object. Okay, so I'm going to call this eyelids. This one I'm going to call eyeball. Okay, and then I selected these two by holding down Shift, okay, and pulled them into my eyelids. I didn't move that one. There we go. Okay, now they're on separate layers, and I can turn them on and off. Okay, so again, and whatever layer I have highlighted, if I make a whole bunch of shapes, you notice it keeps putting it in the same layer. Okay, so layers work slightly different in Illustrator. You have to kind of pay attention. If you're building a complex shape and you're not doing anything with it, it doesn't matter. But if you're doing something like that animation, you definitely need to pay attention to where all your objects are. So I think that's pretty much it. I've showed you the basic tools enough to at least get yourself into trouble and to play around with. I'm more than happy to cover more in Illustrator. I know if you're in graphic design, you get this quite a bit of it. So, but if anybody has questions, Oh, one last thing. Here's one thing. Okay, so if I select an object before I forget, okay, and let's say I want to select a couple of the control points, I can hold down Shift, right, and grab them. But if I click and drag like this, sometimes I select things I don't want. The solution to that is to, if you lock one of the layers, okay, it won't allow it to be selected. Okay. The other solution to it as well, underneath your direct select, there's the lasso tool. So your lasso tool in Illustrator allows you to free-form select control points. Okay, so it doesn't make an actual selection. It just, so if I had multiple things in here and I wanted to kind of find them, okay, or if I had to select a bunch of stuff in an area, okay, the lasso tool is what I would use in order to do that. And the keyboard shortcut for that is Q. You know, I don't know why. I think it's because it used to be called the quick select. They changed the name of it. Anyway, so that's it. Again, if anybody has questions or wants help, by all means, feel free to reach out. Also, if you want a tutorial on something specific, more than happy to do that.